Hello, everyone. This is the Political Brown Kid, and this is another edition of Hollywood in Black and White. And since I've already covered the Game of Thrones series, I want to now cover the prequel to the Game of Thrones. It's actually the follow up, but then they go back in time to do an origin story on the House of Targaryens, which is Game of Thrones House of the Dragon. Now, again, there's going to be some spoiler alerts in here, possibly, but I'm going to try to keep this as high level as possible. But if you have not seen the show and you're interested in seeing the show, you may not want to listen to this right now, but I hope that you want to stick around and listen to it because really we're not delving into too much meat and detail into the episodes. In fact, I'm going to keep this one very generic because I wasn't really overwhelmed with the show itself, but that's just my personal opinion. I have in family members and friends who thought it was good, and then I know some people that had indifferent feelings about it and I have more indifferent feelings about it as well, being as though I'm a fan of the original show. But I'm just focusing kind of really on that black and white aspect of it. And the thing that I want to say is if you, I would recommend that you go back and visit my Hollywood in Black and White on the Game of Thrones one, and you can kind of see where I went as far as my views on that. Because I think with House of the Dragon, it differs, it digresses from what I would say the original Game of Thrones critique was. The original Game of Thrones critique, just for those who, just to kind of give a quick follow up, I did praise them for actually showing black on black love, black relationships. And the show really was black relationship. It was one. And that was Missandei of the Island of North. And of course, her with Grey Worm, the head of the Unsullied Army. I thought they did a very good job in showing a loving, healthy, black relationship. Well, it couldn't, I can't say really too healthy because they really didn't dive too deep into it, but they at least tried to build up a beautiful love story between those two individuals. Aside from my critique of the continuous castration of black males. In the House of the Dragon, my critique is this. I will say that they implemented more black people on the show with, I think, the House of Valyria. I think they were the Valyrians, Valyria. The blacks were that house or that society was supposedly, I guess, black or Nubian. But in a way, I could not tell. And that's my biggest critique. On one hand, I'm going to praise them by saying, I guess they wanted to be, I guess, in this day and age, politically correct and implement a lot more black people into the show. But sometimes when you try to do things in a contrived nature, meaning you're thinking too much. I guess they felt pressure from being politically correct and wanting, having a lack of black people in the first series, Game of Thrones, that they just wanted to inject and make the whole House Valyria black. That would have been fine. However, they paired every black male on the show. And I will say this too. They did differ in the sense that they normally on most television shows, you'll see a black woman with a white male. They always like to make the black woman a bed wench in the white man's fetish fantasy on television. If you watch any TV show, any commercials, really, House of the Dragon differed in they actually put the black male in the role with a white female. But that's also where the problem starts. It's like, again, people don't want to, they always have to lighten up black people on television. And again, I will refer to Henry Louis Gates. He did a special on PBS. Matter of fact, I think it's on Amazon Prime. If you go out there and look, it's called Brazil, a Racial Paradise. And it was a part of a bigger, longer series on race. And they talked about a concept that's known in Brazil as blanqueamento, which means the lightening. And basically what happened, so this woman explained it on the show, she's a historian, black female explained it, was that the Africans that were in Brazil back in the day, I guess I think the Portuguese controlled Brazil, what they wanted to do was they wanted to get rid of the Africans Basically, I think once slavery started winding down, or once slavery was over with, they were like, well, what are we going to do with this high population of blacks? And basically, it was like kind of like if you seen the movie Braveheart, and I'll kind of digress in here, but if you ever seen the movie Braveheart with Mel Gibson in it, and when the king was like, well, if the king was the Scottish people were having feuding with the Irish people or something like that, but the king basically said, if we can't get them out, we'll breed them out. And that's when he implemented prima nocte, or whatever that term is, where the king gets to sleep with any commoner's wife on the first night of their marriage. So Brazil kind of took a similar approach. They said, well, we have all this high population of Africans down here, free Africans. We don't want to look at all of these darkies. So what they basically did was they imported a bunch of, I think, people from Portugal or something like that. But they imported basically a bunch of Europeans, and they said men only. They told the men, don't bring your wives. Oh, excuse me. That's my alarm going off. So let me just pause that. But basically, let me backtrack. So basically what they did was they looked and they said, well, what are we going to do with all of these black people that we have here? These black people are now free. We don't want all of these black people here. And so they said, well, this is what we can do. We need a bunch of, I guess they had a bunch of construction projects that needed to get done, logistics projects during that time. And they said that what we'll do is we'll import a lot of white men from, I think, Portugal or Europe or somewhere. But you look at the special, hopefully you'll look at it. If not, I'll just kind of give you a synopsis. Just know that my countries may be slightly off. They told the men, you cannot bring your wives, men only. They imported a bunch of men into Brazil. And basically those men slept with the African women that were there, and they produced lighter children. And then once those children grew up, they slept with more men. So that's how the lightening came into effect. And that's the term, blanqueamiento. And when you look at a lot of these television shows, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, that's what they're doing. They created a bunch of Valyrians, dark males with blonde hair, and I didn't know why they needed to have blonde hair. They looked stupid on the show, actually, but I guess they were trying to show the relationship to maybe, I don't know, the House of Target. I have no idea why these guys had to have blonde dreads, and they were very dark. It just didn't look right to me. But they had to have the males all have white wives, which in turn had light-skinned and mulatto children. So that's how that's how they do on these television shows, because they want to look at lighter people. And then they have the light-skinned people running around dating further white people, which now they can show those generation of kids being totally white. So it gives the show an out. It lets the show say, see, we have black people on the show. Look at all these black people. But then they get bred out. It's the same thing that we do in society. And that was my biggest issue in terms of racial issue with House of the Dragon. The other issue that I had with the show is that these shows love peddling off, soliciting black women as sexual beings for white men. And the way they did this was they had this old king. Now, this king had to be about 50, 60 years old back in those days. So he 60, 70, matter of fact. I don't even know why I said 50. But he needed a wife because his wife died. So the Valyrians, which are the black people, they were trying to say, well, hey, look, we have some potential suitors for you, king. These women of our royal blood. And they're trying to pimp off, these are black men, by the way. The black men are offering up their light-skinned, young 11, 12, and 13-year-old daughters to this 50 and 60-year-old king. I think it was one girl that was offered up, but he rejected her and he ultimately settled on a white female. But then once the other children became of age, once the king also had a daughter at this time who was of childbearing age. And then once she got married and once she had kids, her kids married her white kids, because of course they're going to show you healthy white on white relationships and white on white love. Her kids married the black females. And then her uncle married the black female. And of course, most of these, if not all of them, were light-skinned black females. So that is the issue that I have with the show. And again, too, when you looked at the show, the black kid, the third issue that I had with the show was, once again, they want to homosexualize the male. They castrate black men on these television shows. The same way, and I refer back to the Game of Thrones, the original Game of Thrones, they gave Grey Worm a good story. They made him a masculine male, like a strong soldier, but they castrated him. He didn't have any working parts down there. Now, when you look at House of the Dragon, the black guy, I don't even know these characters' names. That's how much the show kind of disinterested me. Spoiler alert, that's how I felt about the show. I don't even know these characters' names. But the black Valyrian guy, him and his white wife's son, who's a black guy, he is gay. He's a homosexual. And so he's sneaking off having relations with this other guy. And so he didn't produce. So his wife, they forced him into the marriage with the queen, with the princess. So she was sleeping with the guard. So all of her kids came from his lineage. And then the guy fakes his own death and runs off and goes, the black guy, he fakes his own death and goes off to be with his male lover. Once again, it's always the homosexualization of black men on these television shows. So those are really my critiques as I can see it. Again, that's my opinion of House of the Dragon in black and white. If you have your opinions, please leave them in the comment section, as well as please like and subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to do a lot of this on the entertainment industry, but I'm also talking about socio-political issues as well. Dive into economics, but I always do things in the context of trying to help better relations between blacks, particularly black men, black women, but blacks in general, and seeing how we can progress and move forward. Once again, this is the Political Brown Kid. Everyone take care.